Can we talk about Christopher Nolan for a second? So, a few weeks ago, Oppenheimer came out, and I didn't get the chance to do a review for the movie. But I do think it's one of the best movies of this year, and it's definitely one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies. So, I decided to compile a list of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies, but please take note that I didn't watch all of his movies. So, I'm gonna eliminate those that I didn't watch, and they are following Memento, Insomnia, and Tenet. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any of them yet, but they are on my list, especially Memento and Tenet. So let's talk about the eight Christopher Nolan movies that I did watch. At number eight, I have The Prestige. Now, I don't remember much of this movie. It came out quite a while ago, and this is the only reason it's number eight on my list, because I don't remember it well. I probably only watched it once and never rewatched it after that, but it's still a Christopher Nolan movie. It still has great sequences. It's a great story, and I will definitely rewatch it. At number seven, I have Interstellar. Now I know this is a hot take, but I just wasn't that into Interstellar. I know it's a great story with some great performances, and it's just a sci-fi spectacle, and nothing else can compare to it. But I just didn't enjoy it that much. Probably because the first time I watched it, I didn't understand everything. But apart from that, I still think it's a great movie and something that I will eventually rewatch. At number six, I have The Dark Knight Rises. Now, it's no surprise that The Dark Knight Rises is the weakest of the Dark Knight trilogy, but I still freaking love this movie. And here's another hot take. I think that Tom Hardy's Bane was great. It's not comic accurate, yes, but I still think he did an amazing job. And the story was wonderful. The movie kept you on your toes, and it was just a fantastic Batman movie. At number five, I have Dunkirk. Now, this is one of my favorite war movies ever, especially the way it was shot. And I do think the characters are great. You are invested in the war. It's as if you're on the front lines of the war itself, and it's just fantastic. At number four, I have Batman Begins. Now, this movie redefined the way we saw Batman in cinemas. I know the 1989 Batman is iconic, and it's something a lot of us grew up on. But Christopher Nolan changed everything we thought we loved about Batman and gave us Batman Begins with Christian Bale. Now, Bale isn't really the type of guy you'd think would fit into the role of Batman, but he did an exceptional job, and I think the direction of the movie is what sets it apart from all the other superhero movies. It's fantastic. It's a great origin story for Batman, especially since we didn't get the full origin in the original 1989 Batman. Now, the top three were hard to choose because, in a way, I love all these movies the same. They are also different kind of movies, but each has a special place in my heart, so it's difficult to choose just one. But I decided to do it anyway so that this list can be complete and that it's not just ranking some movies and not the others. So in the third spot, I have Inception, which is actually one of the best sci-fi movies I've ever watched. The acting in this movie is spectacular, and the visual effects are just over the top. I think this movie probably even inspired Doctor Strange. So yeah, this movie was fantastic, and I couldn't stop watching it. I've watched it several times since it came out, and I think the performances by most of the cast is actually all of the cast is fantastic. The direction Christopher Nolan took on this movie is phenomenal, and the writing is brilliant. Everything about this movie is just almost perfect. And at number two, I have The Dark Knight, and it was hard putting this movie in a second spot because it's definitely one of my favorite superhero movies, top three at least. And I think that we all remember this movie for the Joker, but there's so much else that happens in this movie, like Harvey Dent and his progression into becoming Two Face. I do think Aaron Eckhart delivered a wonderful performance. Once again, Bale did an amazing job as the Dark Knight, and this is what defined Batman in cinema from there on forward. Everyone wanted the darker, more grittier, grounded Batman, and it's just fantastic. I can go on and on about this movie because it's one of the first movies that I actually got to watch in theaters because I didn't go to the cinema a lot growing up, but this movie is what brought me back into cinemas, and I can't thank Nolan enough for this. And the movie that comes after this, my top or my number one Nolan movie, is the one that made me fall in love with cinema once again, and that is none other than Oppenheimer. So this is also going to be a short review of Oppenheimer since I couldn't do a full review. This movie is just fantastic. I never thought that I would fall in love with a biopic, but what Nolan did with Oppenheimer's story is fantastic. It's simply brilliant because there's so much story that he told in 3 hours. Just kept you on your toes. It kept you excited. It made you feel everything that Oppenheimer felt. It even delivered on the Trinity test, which was fantastic since they used a little computer effects because everything was done with physical effects, and that's just fantastic. And the acting is wonderful. Robert Downey Jr. was fantastic as Jaws. Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer was just phenomenal, and everyone else just delivered greatly on their roles. Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, everyone else. There are so many great actors, and Josh Hartnett in this movie was just fantastic. He should do more roles like this. This is one of those dramas that doesn't even feel like a drama. It feels like an action movie. Each scene is so intense that you just can't miss a second of what's going on. And I know uh, Nolan gets a lot of flack for his sound editing, but I think this movie was better. And I do think that some of the sound editing is what makes his movies so great. This movie is almost perfect for me. And I know at the beginning I said this might be one of my favorite movies of the year. And I think I can actually say this is my favorite movie of the year. Something that I will definitely rewatch, something that I can constantly go back to and talk about and quote, not actually quote, but you know, it inspires me as someone who wants to walk into the world of filmmaking someday. This is the type of movie that I want to make. Movies that keep the audience excited, that informs them, that teaches them, that drives them, and that makes them fall in love with movies again. So yeah, that's my take. These are my top 8 Christopher Nolan movies since I couldn't watch the other 4. So, what's your top Christopher Nolan movie? Let me know in the comments. And remember, I will be running a competition soon. So you can check that out as well on my Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.